What happens when a civil engineer swaps blueprints for data pipelines? Well, my guest today might have started his career designing roads, but he's now helping enterprises navigate something far more complex. Yeah, I'm talking about data. His name's Charles Southwood. He's the Regional Vice President at Denodo Technologies, whose 3-decade journey from physical infrastructure to digital transformation, I think, gives him a uniquely grounded take on some of today's AI challenges. So if you've ever wondered why so many AI projects get stuck in the pilot phase, or why generative AI systems seem so promising, yet so risky, my guest today is going to bring some clarity to the chaos, because we're going to talk about data virtualization, not as a buzzword, but as a practical solution, one that's quietly powering agile enterprises. And here's the kicker. 2025, yep, even though there's only 4 months of it left nearly, it might just be the year that everything shifts. Because Charles is going to share how one multinational bank has used data virtualization to go from slow and siloed to smart and streamlined, and with the kind of results that would make any CIO notice. But this episode isn't just about tech stacks and timelines. It's about that very real tension between AI, innovation, and governance. So together we will move beyond hype cycles and into implementation, out of those pilot phases, and learn what tech leaders might be able to learn from someone who's seen it all, from the drawing board to the data lake. So whether you are a CTO, a data strategist, or just someone trying to make sense of why your AI projects keep stalling, buckle up, because Charles is going to be bringing wisdom, wit, a few surprises, including a musical reflection or two, to help us reframe how we think about enterprise AI. But enough rambling from me. Let's get Charles onto the podcast now. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me today. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Neil. That sounds like a Cilla Black introduction. It's great to be with you, and welcome the opportunity to join you on the podcast. My name's Charles Southwood. I'm the Regional Vice President for Denodo Technologies, and I've been responsible for the company's operations now for approximately 9 years, covering the Northern European and African territories for the company. In terms of my background, I've spent 30 plus years on the vendor side, largely in middleware data and big data and analytics infrastructure area of the technologies. And actually, I have an engineering background, civil engineering, and initially spent about 5 years in the industry, being involved in design and construction of large structures, dams, bridges, tunnels, tube tunnels, etc., that type of thing. So quite a varied background, I guess, Neil.
It really is, and it's a pleasure to have you join me today. So much I want to talk with you about. Every day on this podcast, I try and demystify complex areas of technology and also look beyond the hype, beyond the buzzwords. And of course, over the last 3 years, all anyone has been talking about is AI, Gen AI, and this year, agentic AI. But I'm curious, from everything that you're seeing, the conversations that you're having, what do you see as the biggest challenge that enterprises are facing right now, especially when relying on generative AI tools that are often built on publicly available data?
Yes, I think there's been an explosion in the demand and appetite at a corporate level for AI-related solutions. We have the privilege of meeting with lots of different organizations, and in 1 or 2 cases, I've met with people who've been told by their boss they want them to do AI, which is quite a challenge. So I think the biggest opportunity, if you like, is to understand what it might be able to do for your business. But you do have to be cognizant that anything you do around Gen AI or AI has to be accurate, trustworthy, reliable. We've got the European Act for AI, and I think that also brings into focus demands by the regulators to force organizations to justify the results that they're getting from their AI to make sure that it's it's accurate and trustworthy. I think the other concern that I see happening increasingly as people start to delve into this area is exactly where the information is coming from, the data that's being used to make the kind of decisions that people need from these solutions. And it's all very well, we've all played on the web asking questions about history and facts that might otherwise be difficult to search for on the web. But fundamentally, that's all public domain data. Once you start doing it in the corporate world, then you start looking at data that might need to come from your internal systems. It might need to be timely and real time, so not the sort of thing that you would normally get from a large language model that might have been built up over perhaps many years of collection of data. And bringing all that data together with the sensitive internal data brings a lot of questions about how you're doing it and what you're exposing to public AI tools that could otherwise perhaps be better kept confidential. Even in our own organization, we've had to have lots of scrutiny to make sure that individuals don't start using AI tools to do transcripts of meetings where there's confidential information being held. And of course, that information is therefore going outside the organization when it's being used in transcripts. So those kind of things, I think, are really key to solve for most corporates at the moment.
Yeah, I really agree with you there. And another problem that many listening would have noticed is that Gen AI can not only lie to you, it can lie to you pretty confidently as well. And as businesses rush to implement AI, how can they better safeguard against these hallucinations and ensure data integrity without slowing down innovation? And one of the reasons I bring that up, before the conversation today, I was reading about yet another legal firm where it was giving incorrect citations. You've got to be so careful in the corporate world. Right?
You absolutely have, and these hallucinations that are referred to are very problematic. As you say, the response that you get is a very confident one, and I think that's the danger, that people can then maybe make business decisions or rely on this information when actually it may be inaccurate. And someone once described it and said it's a bit like having a new intern who's very keen to please and doesn't really have all the information, but tries to give a confident response in order to increase their own credibility in the company. And I guess that's a little bit of what's going on with AI. So there are a couple of things that people are doing to address this. Fine tuning, where you're going off and getting information, not historic information from way back when, but you're doing it effectively in real time to fine tune the answer and get more accurate domain specific information. And the other one is retrieval augmented generation, or RAG as it's commonly called now. And that is an area where we find ourselves at Denodo quite heavily involved. It's where you need to get to real-time business data. So particularly if you're using AI for anything that is timely, and that could be across all industries, it could be to be supply chain, retail, banking transactions, etc. And then you do need to use something like RAG. And of course, timely data is not the easiest of things to get in corporates, as most CDOs will tell you. And so we find ourselves with the Denodo technology able to access data in real time from distributed sources. And this is absolutely a game changer for organizations that are trying to adopt RAG in a secure and sensitive manner. Other thing is that some of the responses you get, and I think it's not impossible for the results to come back in a way that may not be an ethical response, or doesn't have the appropriate guardrails around it. And I think, if I recall, years ago, Microsoft actually did a test on AI where they put a lot of CVs in for a software engineer. And when they ran it in test, the results came back and it had eliminated all the women from the selection on the CVs. And this was because the number of women in technology at that time was relatively low. So the AI had made an assumption that this characteristic was not an important one. In fact, it should be ruled out. So if someone had put, I played for the women's hockey team, then it ruled out women as a selection for the CV, which is clearly fundamentally wrong. So having contextual guardrails to protect against those kind of things is very important. You can additionally have human in the loop oversight, and I think that can be very valuable to make sure that you can't think of all the guardrails. Having that oversight can also help to ensure proactively that there's no misinformation, or you haven't empowered the AI in a way that's inappropriate.
Such an important point there. And I think on a more positive note, before you came on the podcast today, I was reading that you'd previously mentioned that 2025 is the tipping point for business agility through data virtualization. So tell me more about that. What's changed to make that possible now?
Well, data virtualization and Denodo have been in the market since 1999. The technology has moved vastly during that time. And I think also we've seen in the industry huge growth in the volumes of data, the distributed nature. Now many people have got data across multiple clouds, software as a service, perhaps legacy on-premise, other third-party connectivity, and so on. And I think the drive for AI is an appetite to try to get their arms around the vast rich sources of data and get meaningful business insights. And so really people are searching for business agility. And you don't get much better than using virtualization, because at the core of what we're talking about here, and it does sometimes get confused, people think of virtualization being the server virtualization in a hardware way. That's not what it is. And it's also not data visualization, which sometimes gets confused, because that's the analytics tools that people might use for doing their normal BI and analytics. Data virtualization is the ability to unify the data in real time from multiple distributed sources. And I think the reason that we've seen 2025 as a tipping point, particularly around AI, is that it lends itself to real-time access to these vast ranges of different data sources with different formats, different locations, bringing it together in a way that then can be passed to AI tools so they can consume it, but without the need for the data to be moved and copied. So often you'll have organizations, and we see it every day, legacy platforms where they've got multiple data sources. And sometimes these organizations, even today, have a strategy of trying to copy everything they want for data analytics and AI into single repositories. And that's, I mean, in the whole time I've been in the industry, 30 plus years, I've never seen an organization that's been able to put its data in one place. You're always going to have ERP data, some CRM data that sits outside your data and analytics warehouse. So when you want to start to combine lots of data sources together, you're always going to have a problem if you have a move and copy strategy for all your data. And I think that's why we've seen such a huge demand with AI. You need to get access to all those data. We were talking earlier about hallucinations. The ability to access those data sources in real time and combine it with information you've already curated into your warehouse gives you the opportunity to bring the very best of the data together and avoid those hallucinations and poor decisions that we were talking about.
And there is a big focus on ROI of every tech project now, and quite rightly so. So just to bring to life some of what you're talking about there, can you offer an example or a practical example of how a virtualized data layer has actually helped a company improve operations, whether it is in IT, finance or marketing? So I think that'd be really useful and helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think where we see the biggest challenge is where people have the most data. It's fundamental. So large multinational enterprises have challenges around bringing together data, particularly where they've got maybe sensitive data and they've got data sovereignty issues and so on. And Denodo is widely used by those organizations. They might be in the government space or finance, or pretty much any market really, where there's large volumes of data. So risk, compliance, marketing, single view of customer, all are valid and useful use cases. We also see where people have complex and distributed data ecosystems, perhaps, for example, if you're moving to the cloud, or you've moved some data to the cloud and you want to be able to combine that data. By virtualizing, you have a layer, if you like, that sits over the top and allows for people to be able to access that data without worrying about where the data sources come from. I think sometimes people struggle to get their head around exactly what we mean when we talk about the layer in between. But I sometimes use the analogy with Spotify, which most people are familiar with these days. When you're looking to choose music on Spotify on your phone, for example, you have a portfolio of music there which is vast, but actually you don't have any music. You just have, in data terminology, you have metadata. It's information about the music, the data about the data, and it's only when you select the music that it goes and gets it and brings it back. And that's effectively what virtualization can do. So in terms of real life use cases, you can imagine how this just accelerates the access to data vastly. If someone wants to be able to, let's say, change the VAT rate, instead of having to repopulate all the data in their warehouse, they literally change it in a semantic model, a data model in a virtual layer, and then anything they get is already going to be consumed using the new rates. So we see something like about 90%, 80 to 90% improvement in time to market, huge reductions in cost. You were asking about a specific example. We had a multinational bank who implemented the Denodo platform for their cloud migration, and they'd anticipated it was going to take 18 months. They were able to put a virtual layer over everything that was being changed from the legacy to the cloud platform. And by doing that, they were able to complete the project in just 6 months. And those resources that they used for those 6 months also did 5 other projects during the same time. So they reckoned it was about a 90% saving in terms of the resources needed. And of course, 6 months instead of 18 months, that's a 67% saving in time to market. So it can be really profound, and it's a very exciting area to be in, because this is really innovative for a lot of organizations who haven't looked at data virtualization before.
And the question I have to ask on behalf of every business leader and tech leader listening, which, if I'm honest, could take several dedicated episodes to explore on its own, but how can organizations better strike that balance between cutting down their IT costs, but also building flexible systems that are ready for AI integration that the business is crying out for right now?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of organizations is a very good question, because I think a lot of organizations are looking at short-term cost cutting, and that often sits with procurement. But actually, strategic cost optimization can be a much bigger investment. And that's a question really of looking at your digital infrastructure and looking at how you might transform or modernize it. And that might include moving to cloud or software as a service, or even just consolidating some of the technology stacks that already exist. And as the data volumes grow, or automating certain processes, particularly those which are seen as repetitive, can help to reduce the costs and streamline the business. We find that the virtualization approach helps to relieve the organization from duplicating data and having redundancy across the different sources. If you can imagine, you're taking data from a live system, you might be putting it in an operational data store, then it goes into a data lake, then it goes into a data warehouse or a lake house, then it goes into data marts, and then people copy it across onto their server, and you have shadow IT. I think it's TDWI who said that the average data in an enterprise is stored 7 times. Hugely inefficient, big issues around security and governance. So virtualizing is being used as part of that infrastructure modernization, creating a very adaptable, modular and interoperable system. It's also being used a lot where people are looking at things like data fabric or data mesh strategies, where they want to be able to provide an infrastructure for the future that can adapt to vastly extended data sources in terms of both volume and flavor, and virtualization, of course, lends itself particularly well to those sorts of things. I think the other area, Neil, is that people need to start looking more at value, and I think that we were talking earlier about AI and advanced analytics. I think focusing very much on where they can have smart management practices and right size their systems, that can also help to optimize. And it was someone from Gartner actually who said that they saw virtualization as a fantastic way for understanding what the demands are from the business, because you can see what requests are coming from where and audit exactly who's looking at what, and that allows you then to optimize how you manage and secure your data across the enterprise. I mentioned at the beginning my background is in engineering, civil engineering, and the first thing you've got to do is get sound foundations. So I think approaching your IT spending, looking at the core foundations of your IT infrastructure and creating something which is flexible, adaptable, and able to meet the needs, not just now, but of the future, and get rid of any sort of vendor lock-ins and so on, is absolutely key for successful businesses in the future.
And I love how you use the word value there, because I think 3 years ago, many were guilty of getting excited and distracted by the AI gold rush. And as a result of that tech-first approach, I think many have ended up with a lot of projects stuck in pilot phase. But fast forward to 2025, what are you seeing in the current drive towards AI adoption now? Is it now being driven by genuine business need versus hype or peer pressure of leaders just saying we need to be part of this? Has things changed now?
I think there's a realization happening. We all familiar with the Gartner hype curve, and I think certainly in the early days we saw this this expectation, which perhaps was beyond the capabilities of the platforms. And I think I saw recently something like 63% or 65% of AI projects are in pilot and haven't gone live. And I think one of the difficulties for most organizations when they call Denodo and ask for assistance, we see that they still haven't adopted a method that can adequately, firstly, give them access to their corporate data in a secure way, in a real-time manner, and secondly, to do it without exposing their corporate data to the risks of external AI and large language models. So I think these initiatives often, I mentioned earlier, people saying where they've been asked to do AI. I think we've got to be very clear about what it is you expect to get from business, and how the AI capabilities can actually be productive in assisting those outcomes. At the moment, I think a lot of organizations are still playing with AI. We've had some great successes where people have realized that they can embrace RAG that we talked about earlier, and the ability to get to these distributed systems without the moving and copying. I mean, without getting into lots of technical detail, we don't put data in a vector database, so that database never provides the information. It's held within their own corporate infrastructure and only passed to the user in real time at the time of consumption. And that's fundamental to help drive the AI adoption in a secure and business secure manner.
And I think we must be of a similar age. Looking back at your career, you've, like myself, you've seen everything from the arrival of the internet. We've seen mobile, cloud, now AI, so many big changes. I'm curious, what are there any trends that have surprised you most, and anything you didn't see coming, or what would you have done differently if you saw them coming?
Well, I think, it's a very good question, because when I first entered the industry, everything, of course, was on-prem. In fact, many of the customers were using Bureau when I started, which was even more with dial-up. So we really are going back. So I'm not sure if you're quite as old as me, Neil, but I used punch cards at university. But nevertheless, I think what we've seen is the appetite with the advent of data warehouses to move and store and curate data in a location as a single one-stop shop for users to consume that data. And I think the problem is that despite the fact that we're 30 years down the line and we've gone from hierarchical to relational, and now we have a whole variety of different types of databases. We were just talking about vector databases. The fundamental, though, is that people are still moving and copying data. And I think the biggest learning for everybody, and I see some organizations who have strategies who say, we're going to put all our data and analytics data in one place. We've got this solution or that solution. Firstly, there's an issue with vendor lock-in, which I think should be considered and taken seriously. And secondly, it's an unrealistic expectation. The volume of data that any organization has is absolutely vast. I was talking to an organization in the mining industry this morning. Huge amounts of big data, and you can imagine equipment coming off dump trucks, mining information, quarry information, services, so vast amounts of information. That's never going to all go into one data warehouse. So what you're doing, and you're still doing even today, is treating the data as a commodity where you have decided as an IT specialist what you're going to give to the business. And that needs to be turned on its head. The business needs to be able to say, what data do we have across our entire infrastructure, and how can I best access that information? And that doesn't mean that you move and copy everything. You might move and copy some of it. So I think the lesson to learn and the thing that organizations need to do differently is recognizing that they are never going to have all their data in one place, is adopt a strategy that allows them to combine data in an agile, cost-effective manner to give the business what they want, not what IT think they might want. As the industries change and we see most sectors moving faster and faster, bringing out new products or services, they've got to have that agility, and that's the thing that I find most exciting about Denodo, the agility that it lends to organizations when they adopt data virtualization and this logical data management approach.
And fast forward to present day, students are in full-time education, possibly preparing for a job that might not even exist yet. So is there any advice that you'd offer to someone starting out in their career today, especially if it's in a tech career in the context of AI, data, digital transformation? Any advice that you'd pass down there?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that. One of my niece's boyfriends has just finished a data science course and was asking me something very similar. And I feel fundamentally, if they have a strong foundation, as he has in data science and the peripherals of AI, getting involved in understanding more about the AI fundamentals, while proactively practicing the adaptability and the passion for his continuous learning will stand him in very good stead. I think we can't predict exactly what the future holds. It's a bit of a build of a kind of potpourri of skills. But if you can master the basics around things like natural language processing and machine learning, data analytics, those are all skills which in one shape or another are going to be valuable across a lot of different industries, different sectors. And I think standing back from the actual knowledge is the soft skills, the ability to be able to adapt what you've learned before into new market trends. I don't think any of us can really say with certainty what maybe the world will look like in 10, 15 years' time. It's moving faster and faster. But being able to be adaptable, flexible, embrace those changes, I think is very important. As well as things like people skills, being able to be innovative, collaborative, have good communication skills, and then combine that. I think if you can combine those soft skills with the technology skills, that probably puts you in a pretty good place for a successful career.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your insights. But I'm asking you to leave one final gift before I let you go, and that is the soundtrack to your career. Is there one piece of music that maybe holds something to you, meaning to you, and what would it be and why? I'd love for you to leave us on that.
That's a Desert Island Discs question. Yeah. Well, I think if I go right back to the beginning of my career, in fact, it was when I was at school. My brother and I had an old Ford Escort Mark I, which we did 250,000 miles in this car. And when we were at school, in the last year of school, my brother was a year ahead of me. we were driving backwards and forwards in our commute, and we had a cassette tape, Jimi Hendrix Volume 1 and Jimi Hendrix Volume 2. And this tape just went backwards and forwards as they did in those days. You didn't even have to flip it, which was great. Just listening to Jimi Hendrix every day on the commute. And there was a track that Jimi Hendrix had called Crosstown Traffic, which was fantastic. It had some really catchy guitar riffs in it. And it certainly has themes around love and desire, as a lot of Jimi Hendrix songs do. But metaphorically, it also describes the challenges of navigating life. And I think that track, and in fact the whole album, is something that sticks with me, having heard it a very unhealthy number of times over those years, and it's just something I would recommend everybody listen to if they like something that they can reflect upon in their own lives. And it's as I say, if you enjoy heavy guitar music, it's fantastic. It's definitely, that would be on my Desert Island Discs list.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you've infected me with some Crosstown Traffic earworm there. So I will add that straight to our Spotify playlist for other people to check that out. I'm also going to leave a link to the Denodo website and indeed to your LinkedIn, just so people can find you nice and easy if they want to carry on the conversation we started. But more than anything, just thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with me today. Really appreciate your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Neil.
So what's holding enterprise AI back? Well, as Charles reminded us, it's rarely the model. It's actually the data. And without the right foundation, trusted, unified, accessible, AI is little more than a shiny demo. And that's probably why so many are stuck in pilot phase right now. And that's why data virtualization, it isn't just a nice to have anymore. It's the difference between experimenting and executing. And a sobering stat in the conversation there, over 60% of AI projects never make it out of pilot. But on a positive note, the 2025 tipping point that could redefine agility. This conversation has left me thinking less about what AI can do and more about what it should do. So thank you to Charles for not just unpacking the trends today. Listening to him, he's lived them. And from the evolution of data architectures to the personal tracks that mark a life in tech, I think his story is a timely reminder that the best tech leaders don't just follow innovation, they build the bridges to make it real. And not only that, Charles was an amazing guy. Let me give you a peek behind the curtain today. I had an absolute nightmare where I had no broadband, no internet, because the guy was coming to upgrade the system. And typically, what should have been a 20-minute job turned into 2 hours, which meant I was 25 minutes for the recording. Did Charles pack up, toss tables and walk off into the sunset? He should have, to be fair, but he didn't. He very patiently made sure that this conversation happened today. A real gentleman. I'm so glad he did. So if you are listening back, Charles, a big apology for me being late again, but thank you for bringing this topic to life. And for everyone listening, question for you. Is your data infrastructure ready for what's next? Or are you still stuck in the pilot phase? Let me know. techblogwriter@outlook.com, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. Plenty to think about there. I'm going to prepare for tomorrow's guest now. And yes, I will turn up on time. I don't want to make a habit of that. And I will speak with you all same time, same place tomorrow. Bye for now.